take just a moment and allow yourself to fully arrive into this moment. There's been so much movement to get you here. But now you're here. Nothing. Allow yourself to breathe them in. Those sacred waters of freedom and liberation. And feel them flowing into and through you, loosening all of the gunk that has has gotten stuck on the inside of you, on that channel of the divine within you. Allow those waters to loosen. The angers, the grudges, the attachments, the expectations. Allow them to loosen all of the false identifications within you. And as the waters rush in and through you, feel them freeing you of all of that is stuck inside. And as you exhale, allow yourself to let go into those waters of Mother Ganga. Give to her all of that is holding you back. All of that you're holding on to. Identities, she carries them out to the ocean and into the universe. If you find your mind distracted ever, if you find that the mind has wandered, just bring it back lovingly. Don't yell at it, don't berate it, but just gently bring it back to the breath and back to that flow of the sacred Mother River. The goddess of freedom flowing through you. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at chest level in Namaste. And gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly lower the hands and open your eyes. Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together with you all. Starting, as always, with one of the questions that's come in advance from our online audience, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. We have 2 microphones here, one on each side, so if you have a question, just feel free to come up to either of the microphones. How can we be successful in life? Well, it depends what your definition of success is, right? I mean, tragically these days, if you say to people, what is success? A lot of people will tell you it means you make a bunch of money, you go from working in the mailroom to being the CEO of a company, you go from a bicycle to a Mercedes or a private plane. It means you go from a small house or cottage or apartment to a mansion. And if that's your vision of success, how do you do it? Work hard. Don't do anything else. Forget about sleeping and eating and relationships and meditating and, just get to work. Get to work. Do whatever you need to do. Forsake everything else. Be single-pointed focused. Now, it still may not work. I'm sure there's a lot of people doing that for whom it's not working. But it's the only thing that's going to get you all of that, unless you're born into it. At which point, the way you do it is you wave a magic wand for your next life. But if your definition of success is happiness, peace, then I'd say make sure that you've got a lot of balance in your life. Make sure that that which you do is in alignment with that which you believe, with your values, with your ethics, with your priorities. Make sure that you spend time in nature. Make sure that you love yourself, that you love as many as you can. Make sure that you serve, that you give of yourself. Make sure that you learn how to let things go. Because that which steals our happiness and peace in most cases is stuff we can let go of. If you just stop being quite so attached to how other people live, what they say, what they do, how they act, more than half of our problems are gone. 80-90% of our problems are gone, right? So much of that which steals our happiness and peace is what that person is doing. How they're talking to me, how they're treating me, how they're living, the choices they're making. But if you say your definition of success is spiritual awakening, self-realization, God realization, well then a lot of that still applies. Everything I just said still applies. But then you need to add a whole other layer to it, which is dedicated spiritual practice. And a whole other layer of being able to let go. Anything that's blocking you from that truth, anything that's blocking you from living every single moment with that awareness, you need to free yourself from. Whether through internal work, in most cases. You know, the way that a lot of people do it, we talk about in here is, I'll just leave everything behind and go and live on a beach in Tahiti. Or I'll just leave everything behind and go and move to a cave in the mountains. And in psychology, which is the educational, academic background I come from, we call that pulling a location. As in the idea that if you change your location, the person who's there and all of the psyche issues will somehow be different. Doesn't work. So the work is inner, but it's significantly more intense and more focused than if the goal is just peace and happiness. So you've got to figure out what your definition of success is first. I'll leave you, well, not leave you, but just end this question with one of my favorite definitions of success, which is a definition that a very beautiful spiritual leader who used to live right across the river from us, who's since left his body, Swami Dayanand Saraswatiji Maharaj, used to say. His definition of success was the way you respond to the inevitable times that the universe does not behave the way you think it should. I'll say that again. Success, according to him, but I have held this for many, many, many years since he said it because I loved the definition, is how you respond to the inevitable times, regardless of how rich you are, regardless of how powerful you are, regardless of how spiritual you are, regardless of how enlightened you are, the inevitable times that the universe does not behave the way you think it should. So if that's your definition of success, well, that requires all of the work internally, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It requires you to anchor into a truth of you, of meaning, of fulfillment, of success, of joy, of peace, that is so deep that regardless of what the world is doing or not doing, regardless of how in alignment or not in alignment that is with what I want or what I expected, my response is that I would deem successful. Never having to look back and say, oh my God, that wasn't me, I'm so sorry. Never having to look back and say, God, I have no idea what happened to me. I was possessed, something took over me. Never wondering, like, who was that? Because you're always right there. So it's a beautiful definition of success and kind of encompasses all of the rest. So if you like it, take it, it's yours. And then, yeah, the way that we work is we work spiritually. We ground ourselves in a way that we are really like the lotus flower. We're in the world. We haven't left the world. We're in it. But we're not impacted by it in that way. So the lotus, which is the national flower of India, and it's the holy flower that we offer in prayer ceremonies because it lives in the muck, in the dirt. But it doesn't get dirty or mucky. And it's such a beautiful teaching and metaphor of it's not about you have to get out of the world or out of the muck. But it's about you staying unmucky no matter what you're in the midst of. Great. Well, thank you for that question to start. Any questions that anyone here has? Yeah, sweetie, there's a mic right behind you. Yeah, just get up and go. It's easier to go to the mic than to bring it to you.
Hello. Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for your book. I found it so powerful and moving. As you describe yourself when you were like my age and your battle with eating disorders and being in psychiatric hospitals, that resonated with me and my path. And my question about that is, as much as I'm not in that place anymore, and through my yoga and meditation practice, I've experienced the divine within me and realized that that is not my truth. I still find myself holding on. Mm-hmm. How do I fully surrender?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, first of all, congratulations for how far you've come. Really, not easy. Not easy work. Beautiful. Beautiful. Overcoming any kind of addiction requires not only actually working to free yourself from the addiction itself and the mechanics of drinking or using or eating or binging or purging or whatever the mechanics of it may be, but also it requires you to figure out who you are other than that. Because the dilemma becomes, if you are an alcoholic and you stop drinking, well then who are you? Right? I mean, it's not a very empowering self-identity to just say, I'm an alcoholic who's not drinking. I mean, it's certainly better than an alcoholic who is drinking. But there's a whole identity that goes around with that. What we think about, it's not just what we do, it's what we think about, it's who we associate with. It's what fills our mind, it's what fills our heart, it's what fills our lives. And it is how we've identified for so long. Whether you're in and out of treatment, whether you're deciding to tell people, not tell people, it's all of this is who I am. Do I tell them who I am? Do I not tell them who I am? And we identify as the one who is. The alcoholic, the drug addict, the bulimic, the anorexic, the whatever it may be. And so that second stage of healing beyond stopping the behavior is figuring out, well, who are you when you are not engaged in the eating disorder? Who are you when you are not thinking about food? And it's scary and it's extraordinary because it opens up the entire world. The self-vision of most of us, addicts or not addicts, is quite small. Because even if we don't have an addiction that we identify with, we've all got something. I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm a perfectionist, I'm a this, I'm a that. And it's a very small world. And what you're given is this opportunity to actually open into spaciousness. आप लोग बंद कर दो ऋषि कुमार. To actually open into spaciousness of who are you? And here's what's beautiful. In physics we learn the universe hates a vacuum, right? Kind of basic law of physics. Create a low pressure zone, something's going to come in. It draws it in. That's how physics works. Well, but it's also how the physics of self and grace work. When you're so full of who you think you are, you don't have space to actually open to who you really are. And when you surrender and you say, I don't know. This was who I thought I was, but now it's not. And it's a surrender. And it's scary. I know. Have you ever done a trust fall? Have you ever done in school one of these trust falls? Do you know what a trust fall is? Sean, stand up for a sec. What is your name? I'm sorry? Tallulah. Wonderful. So Tallulah, I want you to stand with your back to Sean. Okay? Sean is going to stand behind you. I want you to stand with your back to Sean. Now, you've never met each other, right? She's a total stranger to you, right? She's not a total stranger to you. All right. You know Sean. Okay, Sean, sit down. I need a total stranger. You're a total stranger. Great. Stand up. Wonderful. Now, Tallulah, she's a total stranger, right? Great. Now, what I want you to do, Tallulah, is I want you to put your arms out like this. Just put your arms out. Great. Now, looking straight ahead, do not look back. I want you to fall backwards. See what happened? Now, you trusted a total stranger to catch you. And I guarantee whoever I stuck behind you, nice person, not nice person, spiritual person, not spiritual person, random person off the street, they'd catch you. You fell backwards. You allowed yourself to do it. Now you do that into the universe. Because if every single person in the universe would catch you, it means the universe is catching you. And you have no idea what you're falling into. But you're going to do a trust fall into the universe. Okay? And then that aspect of who you are is going to become apparent as you open your heart to it. Because when you go like this, you can't do that with a closed heart. Right? Just by nature of the physics and the biology. Can't do this and keep my heart closed. As you fall back, the universe is going to catch you and fill you. And then you're going to come to know who you are. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
with the climate, so many animals going extinct, Gaza, what is a healthy boundary on the micro and macro, us being the micro, this world we live in being the macro? It feels natural for it to have us down, but sometimes it feels too much. What is that boundary?
Beautiful. So the micro is the macro. In our scriptures it said really beautifully, yatha pinde tatha brahmande. And it means as is the individual, so is the universe. So there isn't actually a boundary between micro and macro. And yet, the macro includes a lot more than the climate crisis disaster, the wars and the violence, the hunger, the human rights abuses. The dilemma for a lot of us is when we open our hearts fully. What comes pouring in is the death and the pain and the suffering. As though somehow that was what our universe was made up of. And a lot of that, of course, just psychologically we know it's because, well, hey, that's what the newspapers are giving us. That's what we're seeing on social media. It sells a lot better. But the real detrimental side of that is that we feel like we've got only two options. Either kind of stay closed to protect ourselves, or stay open and just be ravaged with unbearable pain over things that we really have essentially, in most cases, zero control over. Climate crisis, there's thankfully stuff we can do. But as far as that which is happening in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Myanmar, in so many places, most of us, other than prayer, have really very little actual impact. And so it's even more painful because we suffer and there isn't actually something for us to do. And there's a lot of aspects of this. One piece that I think is really important is when we open to the universe, to recognize that for everyone who's being killed, and for every mother and father and child and sister and brother who's losing a loved one, there's a family welcoming a new birth. And for everyone whose husband or wife has been lost in war or in violence, there's someone getting married and starting a new life. And for every bomb that is falling and decimating and destroying, there are meadows of flowers that are blossoming. And there are people risking their lives to feed, to help, to house, to protect. One of the really beautiful blessings and gifts that I've had in being able to do a lot of the interfaith work that I've done is I've met people who are alive today because back during World War II, some non-Jewish family had protected them as a newborn infant and had rescued them or saved them or brought them somewhere else. The number of people I've met in their late 70s, 80s, who tell the story of the courage of people to rescue infants who were not theirs. So for every atrocity that we open our hearts to, we have to make sure to also open our hearts to all of those acts of love, to all of those reaching across chasms and holding hands, to all of those on different sides of these wars coming together in brotherhood and sisterhood. And open our hearts to that as well, both for mental, psychological, physical, spiritual health of ours, but also simply because it's truth. Opening only to death and destruction and darkness isn't truth. And so if we open, we have to open to all of it. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is to really be clear about action. The Buddhist tradition emphasizes right action as really a very core precept. In the Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition, we speak a lot about karma, which is action. But we speak about karma yoga, that action which is rooted in unity, oneness, dharma, and that action which leads to unity, oneness, dharma. And at times like this, we tend to have one of two reactions. Either we are irate and furious and we want to scream and shout and post on social media how angry we are and picket and do these sorts of things. Or we want to kind of crawl under our covers and, eat chocolate cake and just sleep through the next few years. And neither of them is either particularly healthy for us or effective at all in the world. And what we need to find is in places where things that we know shouldn't be happening are happening, we actually have a third option, which is how can we be agents of change? Not just agents of anger, not just people who know how to yell no, but people who actually have the ability to say yes to something. It's like that beautiful prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, right? That says, "Oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy grace, of thy mercy. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is injury, pardon. Let me be that instrument." And we're not going to be able to be it for everything. Right? We can't stop the lions from eating the zebras. In nature, it's sort of what happens, you watch these National Geographic shows and you always root for the zebra. But there's really not much that you can do about it. The lion's going to get at least one of them. And sadly, for most of us, there's not a lot that we can do to impact and influence the way that foreign governments are acting. Unless you happen to be the head of a country or the head of a big corporation that's funneling a bunch of money into them or whatever it may be. But the truth is, there's violence, there's human rights abuses taking place all over the world. And there's a lot we can do about it. Wherever you live, I guarantee you there are children sleeping hungry. I guarantee you there are women being raped and brutalized. I guarantee you there are child sex workers being sex trafficked. Use that anger as a catalytic energy to actually make change where you can. rather than just shouting into space. Allow your anger at violence, at human rights abuses, to funnel into a way where you actually can make a change. And there's a lot of ways we can. And allow it to enable you to be committed to being an instrument of peace. And as people who are furious, anger does something really interesting. It causes our vision to contract. It's what it does. Lust does it, fear does it, anger does it. Different outcomes, different motivating factors, but every one of them takes our vision and goes whoosh. And we are focused like this. Whether we're afraid of something, whether we want something, whether something really is making us angry. And it narrows our vision. And with narrow vision, we can't achieve very much. It's fine for a temporary sympathetic nervous system reaction. A bear is chasing you. Yeah, be focused on the bear, like you don't want to notice the full moon ahead, But in general, without broad vision, we're stuck. And so you want to get out of that reaction, reconnect to that divine, whatever that means for you, to that source of energy, of rightness, of light, of perfection in the universe, and offer yourself as an instrument. Because there actually is a lot you can do. And it may not necessarily be impacting those families in Gaza. But children who are hungry on the streets of New Delhi, or Mumbai, or New York, or Los Angeles, are suffering just as much as children who are hungry in war-torn areas, about whom there's less we can do. So do whatever you can. If you've got disposable income to donate to organizations that are working on the ground, by all means, donate it. Do whatever you can do. But allow yourself to be as impactful of an instrument. And simply venting on social media, as satisfying in the moment as it may feel, actually doesn't achieve anything. And all it does is takes that energy that you actually could have directed somewhere useful. And it makes you feel like you've done something when you haven't. It's an illusion of action. So don't let yourself be sort of kidded that easily. Actually do something. Because we're here to act. We're here to serve. It's what the entire Bhagavad Gita is rooted upon. Stand up. Do your duty. Fulfill your dharma. Serve. In whatever way you can. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Yes. Just one sec. Let him turn on the mic, sweetie. I can hear you, but people in the back might not be able to.
I was just want to ask that how to improve in studies and just learn.
Great. How to improve in studies. So, first of all, it's really important to realize not anybody rather, is good at everything. Right? No one is good at everything. different things come easy to different people. Some people are really good in math, not so good in art. Some people are really good in art, not so good in math. And both art and math are really beautiful and really important. And so it's really important for you to realize when you study that there are going to be things that come easily and naturally to you, and then there will be things that are really difficult. And you still need to study sincerely, but don't judge yourself based on that. Not anyone can do everything. And so you've come into this world with skills and abilities and a specific karmic package that's going to make certain things that you really enjoy and things that you can do and things that you succeed in. And then things that you just, no matter how hard you try, it seems like it just doesn't come. And that's okay, because that's true for everybody. So you've got to remember that. You still have to study everything, even if it's not easy. But just don't judge yourself based on it. And I know it's hard because you look around and other people are good in that thing that's hard for you. And then you think, that's not fair. Why can't I also be good in it? But I promise you there are things that you're good in that other people aren't good in. And the secret to being really successful in life is to stay focused on what your dharma is, not what other people are doing. Okay? So that's first. Second thing, when you study, make sure that that's all you're doing. Okay? No TV, no phone, no music, no talking to anybody. Okay? Do you have your own mobile phone? Okay. I want it to be in a different room than the room you're studying. Okay? No excuses. Phone only comes into the picture when all homework is done. No exceptions. Okay? No TV. No nothing until all the studying is done. Because a lot of us think, oh yeah, no problem, I can do this. You cannot. And what they found, by the way, is that even having your phone, even if it's on silent and upside down, people perform significantly worse on cognitive tests. They've done studies of putting people in front of computers, giving them basic cognitive types of tests to do. One group had to leave their phone at the door. The other had their phones on the desk, but the phones were off or on silent and upside down. They couldn't see anything, no notifications coming, couldn't hear anything. But simply the presence of the phone on the desk significantly decreased how well they did. Okay? So no distractions. Last. Well, two more actually. Second to last. If you're struggling, get help. Get help. Ask your teacher. Sometimes not everything's obvious. Sometimes teachers think that they've made something really clear, and it's really quite confusing. Never be shy to ask a question. I was always the student, always. Sat in the front with the questions, always. I had questions. And people used to think, who is she? But what I found was, and I didn't, ask questions about things that I didn't have questions about, but what I found was that if you actually really pay attention and you really try to understand it, a lot of times there's questions. Not everything makes sense, especially in certain subjects, especially if they don't come very easily to you. And if your mind says, oh, everybody's going to laugh at you, don't ask, don't listen to that part of your mind. Ask your question. Or if you don't want to ask in class, go to talk to the teacher separately. But make sure that you get those questions answered. And lastly, most importantly, the only thing that can be expected of you is sincerity. As I said, you're not going to be good at everything. But you've got to be sincere about whatever you do. But do not ever identify yourself or judge yourself based on it. If you get a bad grade on an exam, don't feel badly about yourself. You're not a grade. You're not a number. You're not a score. It's not who you are. Maybe it means you didn't study hard enough. Maybe it means you didn't understand the material. Maybe it means it was just a bad day. It can mean 100 things, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Okay? You promise me?
Yes.
I never, ever, ever want you to feel like, oh, I am not good enough, or I'm a failure, or I'm not worthy because of a grade or a mark or a score or a ranking. You are divine. You are perfect, whether you can do mathematics or not. It's a good thing to learn, but it has nothing to do with the perfection of who you are. Okay? So promise me you're going to remember that?
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. And I look so forward to seeing you tomorrow. And so much love to you all.